A huge weather pattern change will be coming to the United States this weekend, and this is going to bring some brutally cold weather to much of the United States, which will set up for this month being one of the coldest Januaries that we've seen in a long time. In addition to that, we are watching for the threat of at least one winter storm, maybe even a couple over the next week or so. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States over the next couple of weeks, and we'll begin with what's happening across the country this morning. And for most of us, things are looking nice right now. Plenty of sunshine across almost the entire lower 48. A couple areas that we're looking at, we do have a little bit of cloud cover moving into the Midwest, a few snow showers back over in the Northeast, a little area of moisture that's going from the Pacific Ocean into Texas. This will bring a few showers and thunderstorms into the Gulf of Mexico over the next few days. And then back over on the West Coast is really the big story for today, where we have several wildfires ongoing around the Los Angeles area, and conditions remain favorable for rapidly spreading wildfires with high winds and low humidity for the next 48 hours before eventually by the tail end of this week, we think conditions will become a lot less favorable for wildfires. But overall, it's really quiet for the most part. The only big event happening at this exact time are the wildfires in California. Now, the weather's going to be changing a ton over the next couple of weeks, as we are expecting one of the coldest Januaries that we've seen in decades across the United States. And one of the biggest reasons why is because we've had so much Arctic air coming out of Canada. So let's talk more about the weather pattern that is coming up across the country, beginning with the jet stream. This is what it looks like right now. We have mostly zonal flow east of the Rocky Mountains, which is going to keep things very quiet over the next few days, meaning not really any big winter storms or any sort of big severe weather events, at least through the rest of the work week. That will change as we go into the weekend. Notice that we have winds coming out of Canada right now over in the Pacific Northwest, and this is actually wrapping around an offshore low pressure system just to the west there of California. The reason why this is important is because this particular wind pattern that we're seeing in the low to mid levels and even into the upper levels of the atmosphere is ramping up all that dry air and those very strong winds back over in California, which is igniting stronger fires, essentially meaning that fires are spreading much more rapidly because of the winds and as well as the dry air. So not a good situation there. The good news is that the winds will start to taper down later in the work week, probably by Thursday and Friday. With that said, the wildfire threat will still definitely exist with how many wildfires we currently have happening in California. As we eventually go into Thursday into Friday, the weather pattern will change just a little bit. The winds will start to come a bit more out of the northwest into areas like the Midwest, and the reason why this is important is because there will be a small area of cold air that'll be moving across the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and the Northeast, and in all reality, this is going to be a typical cold front in winter, but eventually as we go into the weekend, that is where things are really going to start to change, because you'll notice that the polar jet stream is going to really start to dip down here into the Pacific Northwest and the northern plains as we go into Saturday morning. A couple things are going to set up here. The first of which, we're going to actually have a winter storm attempting to form back over in the central plains in the Midwest. This will bring the potential for snow, some rain, and perhaps even a little bit of ice accumulation areas in the Ohio Valley and the Northeast. But more importantly, we are going to be talking about a huge Arctic blast as we go into the late weekend and eventually into next week. You'll notice that the jet stream really starts to ramp up with northwesterly flow in a very large area across the northern plains, and this is going to usher in a ton of cold air as we go into the beginning of the work week next week, and we could be talking about the coldest weather that we've seen so far this year across the northern and central plains and also back through the Midwest. This weather pattern is going to be very favorable for very cold air with a big Arctic blast. Another thing that we could see as well as we go into the early to mid portion of next week is some sort of setup where maybe a storm system attempts to move across the southern plains, similar to what we just saw a few days ago, and we may see some sort of snowfall setup down here near the Gulf Coast. With how cold it's going to be, I definitely wouldn't rule out some sort of winter weather event here somewhere near the Gulf Coast or back over onto the east coast of the United States. Where that happens, we have no clue right now, but we will talk more about who and exactly where we'll be seeing snowfall over the next 7 to 10 days. And then eventually, as we go later into next week, the weather pattern will start to become a little bit more tame with not nearly as much cold air across the country. So let's expand more on how cold it's going to be getting across the United States. You'll notice that again, a small little area of cold air will move through the east coast over the next couple of days, but eventually as we go into the weekend, you'll notice things actually will be warming up. We're going to have a little bit of a southerly wind here coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. Overall above average temperatures from the Midwest back through the Great Plains. Here's a low pressure center just to the north there of the Midwest. But as we go into Saturday and into Sunday, that is where we're going to be talking about big changes to the forecast. We are going to have a huge pocket of cold air coming right out of Canada, and this is going to be an intense Arctic blast. We are talking about an elongated cold front all the way from Canada back into Texas. All this cold air will be moving and streaming here through the Great Plains in the Midwest and all around the Rocky Mountains, where well below average temperatures are likely, especially back over in the Midwest and as well as into the areas like the Northern Plains on Sunday. And eventually, as we go into Monday into Tuesday of next week, that is when the most intense pocket of cold air is expected in the United States, especially back over in the Northern Plains, the Midwest, and even back into parts of the Central Plains, including Missouri. Cold air, will go as far south as areas like Florida, and it's a completely different story back over on the West Coast where warm air will be building, and this could even continue the potential for some wildfires back over into California as a drier weather pattern continues. And then eventually by the middle of next week, that is when that cold air continues to sink over towards the East Coast. Warmer weather will start to build back over in the Northern Plains, and we should be back to average by the tail end of next week. If not, we will just be slightly below average for most of the country. So good news, this Arctic blast will last about 3 to 4 days and not multiple weeks. This is not a repeat of February of 2021. And you know it's going to be cold when the Climate Prediction Center has nearly the entire country shaded in some layer of blue, especially back over here in areas like the Great Plains, the Midwest, and back through the Ohio Valley, where there is a very high likelihood of below average temperatures from Sunday all the way through next Thursday. So it is about to get very cold in the United States. Now, how exactly cold will it be getting? Well, here's an early indication of how cold we could be talking about as we go into Sunday morning. Temperatures could easily be sub-zero back over into the upper Midwest and the Northern Plains. Our freezing line will drop down into Texas and even back over into areas like Mississippi. And then eventually, as we go into Monday, that cold air continues to sink south, even towards the Gulf Coast. Sub-zero temperatures continue to build in the Midwest and the Northern Plains. And then eventually by Tuesday morning, that appears to be the coldest morning out of this Arctic blast stretch, where we'll be talking about temperatures as low as 25 degrees below zero back over in Minnesota and North Dakota. Overall, not really going to get to record breaking by the looks of it, but definitely going to be very cold. And then eventually, as we go into Wednesday, things will start to warm back up unless you are back over in the Northeast, where that cold air will continue to push further to the east. And we could even have below freezing temperatures back over into areas like northern Florida. And this is what it could feel like as we go into next Tuesday morning. Wind chills could be as low as negative 40 degrees back into the Northern Plains. This could cause frostbite, so we're definitely going to have to watch this very closely. Sub-zero wind chills as far south as Kansas, even into the Oklahoma Panhandle, and back through the Ohio Valley in the Northeast do appear likely as of right now. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and we'll continue to keep you posted with the latest on this big Arctic blast that is coming to the United States. Now, there is a chance for maybe 1 or 2 different winter storms over the next couple of weeks, and one that we have a pretty high confidence in is something that's upcoming as we go into Friday night and as well as into Saturday. We are expecting a large storm to form across the deep south all the way back through the Ohio Valley and even back into the Great Lakes region, where moderate to heavy snowfall will be possible. Exactly where the heaviest snowfall falls is still a little uncertain. There is a chance even for a little bit of severe weather over here in Mississippi and Alabama, so that'll be something to watch for. As we go into late Saturday and into early Sunday, this snow will move into areas like northern New England and back through much of the Northeast, even parts of the Ohio Valley dealing with a little bit of snowfall. And then eventually, as we go into Monday, that clears out, and then things turn to the south or maybe even near the East Coast. I mentioned this at the beginning of the forecast when we're talking about the jet stream. There is a chance that we see some sort of winter weather event take place near the Gulf Coast or back over onto the East Coast early next week. Exactly where it happens, we have absolutely no clue. I mean, the computer models have been very back and forth. Initially, it looked like it might be over in the Carolinas. At one point, it looked like it might be in Texas. Now it's back to Texas. I mean, it just keeps flipping back and forth. So there's really no skill at this point in forecasting where this could happen. But we are definitely watching this trend closely, because at this point, the temperatures will be cold enough. The jet stream will be way down here to the south. So we should be able to see at least some sort of precipitation event take place here near the Gulf Coast. Whether that involves wintry precipitation remains unknown, but I would at least give it a 20 to 30% chance that we'll see some sort of winter weather event near the Gulf Coast as we go into the early to mid portion of next week. The GFS also shows a big time snow event middle of next week. Again, at this point, we have no clue if that's going to happen, but it is a possibility. And then eventually after that, things become a lot more uncertain. And this is the chances of you seeing greater than an inch of snowfall over the next couple of weeks. Overall chances are very low across the Gulf Coast and into the southern plains, but there is a chance, 10 to 20%. Can't disregard that. And then back over in the Ohio Valley and Northeast, that is where we are expecting the potential for a winter storm as we go into the weekend. It is unknown if we will actually see winter storm criteria met, but we will likely at least see 3 to 6 inches of snow snow in many areas. As we get closer, we'll continue to keep you posted on the track of that and exactly where the snow falls, so make sure to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon down below so you're notified with the latest video updates. And don't forget, there's only 5 days left to pick up 750,000 subscriber merch at shopmaxvelocity.net. We have t-shirts available, hats, and as well as stickers. Again, you can check this out with the top link in the description below or at shopmaxvelocity.net.